In northeastern Arizona, the corridor along Old Route 66 holds some interesting relics of recent and long ago history. We toured a portion of the rugged region with our Honda Pilot and were able to enjoy quite a wide cross-section of out-of-the-ordinary sights. Certainly the most well-known and most visited location among our stops was the Petrified Forest National Park. A major tourist magnet for travelers on Interstate 40, as well as those retracing bygone days on the Mother Road, is so named for the trees dating back some 225 million years that have, well, turned to stone. Back in the days of dinosaurs, this area of the Painted Desert was a floodplain, laced with streams, and inhabited by animal and plant life that's found only in fossilized forms today. Over time, the trees were felled by nature and washed down to the floodplains, where silt, mud, and volcanic ash buried them. Silica-laden groundwater gradually seeped through the logs, and as time wore on, the silica crystallized into quartz, replacing the wood tissue of the trees. In its continuous evolution, as the Earth's climate changed over millions of years, wind and water eroded the landscape to expose the long-buried logs, and a treasure of other remnants of earlier life in the region. In the 1800s, explorers brought word of the colorful Painted Desert and its stone trees back to the east, and pioneers and sightseers made this a destination. The colorful crystal patterns of the petrified wood can be viewed up close on various hiking trails and portions of the park, but it is strictly forbidden to take any home for souvenirs. Area shops do sell samples that have been gathered from outside the park's boundaries, though. A 28-mile-long road connects the north and south entrances of the park, and spur roads lead off to points of interest and hiking trails. Throughout the park, you'll find not only views of the famous logs, but also sweeping vistas that make it clear where the Painted Desert got its name. These formations, known as the teepees, show the colors created by minerals in different layers of the Earth's surface. Additionally, human history can be observed in numerous petroglyphs etched into rocks and settlements dating back to the 1200s. More modern history is marked by the remains of the now overgrown original roadbed of Route 66 through the park area. Moving westward from the Petrified Forest National Park, we explored some lesser-known spots dating back to the days of Indian massacres, rough-and-tumble railroad camps, and the earlier days of Route 66 tourism. We'll continue our trip right after these messages. Arizona. At Two Guns, adjacent to the present-day Interstate 40, you'll find the silent remains of buildings and stone enclosures that mark what was once a thriving attraction for travelers in the region. Here, where a now closed bridge crosses Diablo Canyon, the Apache Death Cave, and a zoo, along with a gas station, store, cafe, cottages, and campground, provided entertainment and replenishment for drivers starting in the 1920s. Originally known as Canyon Lodge in the days before Route 66, Two Guns has quite a bloody, and some say cursed, history. In the 1870s, Apaches were making violent raids into this Navajo territory. As the story goes, after one particularly savage attack, the Apaches hid out in a cave in Diablo Canyon. The enraged Navajos stuffed the narrow cave entrance with brush and set it afire, with the end result being the deaths of about 50 Apaches as well as their horses. The remains were left where they lay in the cave until the 1920s, when the Apache cave was opened to tourists. In 1905, John Shaw and Bill Smith committed a robbery at the Wigwam Saloon in Winslow and were pursued by the sheriff and his deputy to Diablo Canyon. In a gunfight, Shaw was shot dead and rolled into a shallow grave along the canyon. When word reached the patrons of the saloon, a group headed out to give Shaw the drink he had paid for but never received before pulling the robbery. They dug him up and poured his drink into his mouth, while a companion brought along a camera to record the event for history. In the early 1920s, Earl and Louise Cundiff set up Canyon Lodge to generate revenue from passing travelers on National Trails Highway. A couple of years later, Harry Indian Miller arrived on the scene and began leasing land at Canyon Lodge for his own business venture, Fort Two Guns. He brought in animals for the zoos and decided that cleaning out the Apache Death Cave would make it a suitable tourist attraction. Additionally, with his partner, Chief Joe Sekakuku, he carved out some fake prehistoric caves in the canyon. With singing coyotes and native dancing and singing, Fort Two Guns and neighboring Canyon Lodge were quite a draw. On March 3, 1926, violent death again came to town when Harry Miller shot Earl Cundiff to death. During a well-publicized trial, with many witnesses on both sides of the matter, details of threats, affairs, and other illicit behavior came to light, and in the end, Miller was found not guilty for having killed in self-defense. The matter didn't end there, as subsequently locals knocked down billboards for Fort Two Guns along the highway. Miller had legal battles with Louise Cundiff over improvements to her property. He was arrested for defacing Earl's grave, and fires destroyed businesses throughout the town. Eventually, Miller moved away to a cave near Lupton, Arizona. In 1934, Louise remarried and revitalized Two Guns and Miller's Zoo. New owners took over in 1963, only to have the property burned to the ground in 1971 after an explosion of the gas tanks. Intermittent efforts to revive the town have taken place since then, but none have met with lasting success. On our visit, we found a pretty desolate Two Guns. We then drove our pilot north a few miles from Two Guns to where the remains of the railroad camp of Canyon Diablo waste away. The camp sprung up in 1880, while work on a bridge to cross the 250-foot deep canyon was done, and the location was considered one of the roughest, toughest towns in the West. Murder and mayhem were a daily part of life for the encampment, and it's said that no lawman survived more than a month. Herman Wolfe, who passed away in 1899, is reputed to have been the only person to have died peacefully at Canyon Diablo, and his is the only marked grave to be found today. Legend has it that quite a bit of loot from various robberies in the Canyon Diablo and Two Guns area is still buried or lost in the canyon. We unfortunately didn't stumble upon any with our Honda. We then headed a bit farther west to another deep canyon that presented an obstacle for early travelers. Padre Canyon was finally spanned by a highway bridge in 1914, and we went in search of the now isolated but still standing structure. Crossing more than 100 feet above the canyon, Padre Canyon Bridge was originally part of the Flagstaff to Winslow Highway, then later served traffic on Route 66 from 1926 until 1937. The steep, curving approaches to the bridge had rendered it too dangerous for the increasing traffic on Route 66, and another bridge was opened in October of 1937, and the highway was realigned to what is present-day Interstate 40. The portion of the road leading to the old bridge is rough and rocky, but taking care, we were able to reach it with our Honda without a problem. We then made our way back out to the more well-traveled portions of old Route 66 and headed back west toward California. Our stops all made for some interesting history lessons and some quiet, rugged scenery. Our Honda Pilot once again proved to be a comfortable, confident travel partner that was fun to drive on all of the varied terrain we encountered. If you visit the area, the Petrified Forest and Two Guns are easily accessible from the main highways, but be prepared for some rough backcountry travel, unsuited to passenger cars, if you want to check out the remains of Canyon Diablo or the Padre Canyon Bridge.